authority are usually looked at as crazy. Conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, but it's,
the CIA coined the term conspiracy theorist.
You're a smart dude. You're not crazy.
There's a problem in the way you approach these things, because you approach them all knowing before you even start that they're a conspiracy.
I'm telling you what I think.
So that's confirmation bias.
I'm telling you, hey, dude, when you lie so much, you got to prove it to me. But just in general, it's history, science, education, energy. Everything has always been controlled by the government since day one. Radio has been used as propaganda since the day it was invented. You think some independent dude just invented radio and then he started broadcasting like his favorite music and shit and his thoughts? No, it was the government from day one in radio. It was the government in all countries from day one in TV, in the movies. It was all radio, TV, and the movies have always been about propaganda, always in every country. What's the point of it? What's the point of...
So all the math is fake, like that the Earth is going 24 hours in a circle. Is that all fake? That it spins, it's going 1,000 miles an hour?
I don't... when you look into it, we're stationary. They haven't proved... If you look into the experiments... If you look into the experiments to prove that the Earth is spinning, all of them failed. Look into it.
What are you
you could just think that. We've been indoctrinated into thinking
that's not true. That's not true.
Okay, I'm crazy. I get it.
And Einstein elevated that to a principle and said, if you're moving at if you're not accelerating, you're just moving at a constant speed in a plane, or now. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing now. We're moving around the sun at effectively constant speed. Then you can't tell. So there's no experiment you can do. We could look at the decay of a radioactive nucleus or some electricity and magnetism or bounce a ball, have a pendulum, whatever it is. And there's no experiment you can do to tell you whether you're moving or not. Therefore, that concept has no meaning because you can't measure it. And that's led Einstein to relativity. Wow. So that's the basis of general relativity, which is our best theory of the universe. That's led Einstein to relativity.
True. That's not true.
Okay, I'm crazy. I get it.
Eddie, Jamie, what you going to say?
I don't have the science in my head to back it up either, but that's not true. You can't say things like that. That's what Eric Dubé says, and he's not backing it up.
Where's the evidence that... Find the evidence.
There are 13-year-old kids in high school right now that can show you the evidence with scientific...
How come you can't show it to me?
Because I'm not in class right now, and I'm not up to date. I'm doing J.R.E. work right now.
Okay, you're talking about some shit you don't know about. You're talking about some shit you don't know about.
But so are you. But you're saying
I'm just saying I don't trust it.
You're saying something that people have been proving for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Look into the Michelson-Morley experiments. That was Einstein said it himself. Einstein said...
even very simple things, like you go back to the Greeks, so Aristotle and the great, very clever people, but they thought the Earth was at the center of the universe. Why? Because it feels like it's at the center of the universe. It feels like we're not moving. And that's quite a deep point, actually, in physics. It's like, why is it that we're flying around relative to the sun very fast at whatever speed it is, 18 miles a second or something like that, and the whole solar system is going around the Milky Way galaxy and so on? But why is it that we don't feel it? And the Greeks quite naturally said, well, because we're at the center of the universe. They also said everything falls towards the Earth, so therefore the Earth must be at the center. It's natural.
Right.
And actually it's quite a deep thought to understand why it doesn't feel that we're moving. You have to go all the way to Einstein, really, for someone to take that very seriously. And he said, well, this... there's a great little explanation in Stephen Hawking's Brief History of Time about this, that the idea that you can't tell whether you're moving or not demolishes the notion of absolute space. So if we think about space, if I said space to you or most people, I suppose, you'd think the way that Newton did, of a big box within which things happen. And that's got to be, that's a natural picture of space and the universe, isn't it? It's a thing in which all the planets and galaxies are placed. But in the Brief History of Time, Hawking says, well, imagine bouncing a ball. So we bounce a ball on the table now, a tennis ball. So I drop it and I catch it again. So let's say I drop it and it takes a second to bounce up. So in that second, the Earth has moved about 18 miles or so in space around the sun. So you could ask the question, did that ball return to the same place in space or not? And the answer is, you can't answer it. It does from our perspective, but from the perspective of someone watching the Earth go all the way around the sun, when I caught it again, it had moved 18 miles. And then from some other perspective, it would have done something else. So the point is, you can't say this is a point in space. It came back to the same place, because that just depends on your perspective. Depends on whether you're watching the Earth go around the sun or whatever it is. So Einstein said that means there's no such thing as absolute space, which kind of follows if you think about it. But that's it's a cool but difficult thought process.
Right. I mean, that's essentially what's happening when you're on a plane. I mean, if you're throwing a ball up in the air and catching it on the plane, it's happening at a much smaller scale, right?
Yeah. I mean, you're flying at 600 miles an hour relative to the ground.
But it doesn't seem like it when you're sitting there.
Yeah, and Einstein elevated that to a principle and said, if you're moving at if you're not accelerating, you're just moving at a constant speed in a plane, or now. I mean, that's essentially what we're doing now. We're moving around the sun at effectively constant speed. Then you can't tell. So there's no experiment you can do. We could look at the decay of a radioactive nucleus or some electricity and magnetism or bounce a ball, have a pendulum, whatever it is. And there's no experiment you can do to tell you whether you're moving or not. Therefore, that concept has no meaning because you can't measure it. And that's led Einstein to relativity.
Wow.
So that's the basis of general relativity, which is our best theory of the universe.
There was a war on drugs. We started a war on drugs. Turns out we're bringing it in. Then there's a war on terrorism. Turns out we created Al-Qaeda. You understand why I'm crazy? I'm crazy because of that shit.